Well, hello there. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everybody from wherever you are in the world. Very excited to be here to introduce our next WSET Bite-Size Rum Series session in partnership with the West Indies Rum and Spirits Producers Association. Today's session will be digging into the wonderful world of Saint Lucia rums with our friends from Saint Lucia Distillers. Thanks everyone for being here today. Just remember, if you do have any questions throughout this session, you'll see down in the bottom of your screen, there's a little Q&A tab. Please use that for any questions. We will do our very best to get to them for you. My name's Rob McCackey. I am the Head of Business Development for Spirits here at WSET. Hopefully you're all very familiar of who we are. We are the world's leading provider in qualifications for spirits, wine, beer, and sake. And we've been doing this for a little over 50 years. So we have been providing professionals and enthusiasts with all of the knowledge they need to cover their beverage alcohol needs. You can find more information about our courses at wsetglobal.com. We work through a network of over 800 providers in 70 plus languages with a variety of delivery mechanisms, so I'm sure there is a provider to fit your needs. This session today, it will be recorded, and post-session you'll be able to find it along with all of our other sessions on our WSET Global Events Hub on YouTube. But without further ado, let's introduce our speakers for you. We are very, very lucky today to have two experts with between them well over 60, probably closer to 70 years of experience in beverage alcohol. I'm sure they'll appreciate me saying that. Let me introduce to you Ian John. So Ian John is our Distillery and Quality Service Manager at Saint Lucia Distillers. Been working in this industry for over a quarter of a century. He is responsible for a whole wealth of things over there at Saint Lucia Distillers, not least of which all of the operational aspects and the management of the sugarcane crop operations, which includes the entire process from planting and harvesting to fermenting sugarcane juice, which is very, very exciting. We also have Lennox Wilson with us, our production manager at Saint Lucia Distillers, another expert with 30 plus years in beverage alcohol, 30 of those in cane spirits industry. He's also the chairman of the Regional Caribbean Committee, currently undertaking the revision of the CARICOM standards for rum. So without too much further ado, I'm going to slip into the background here and let Ian and Lennox talk you through the wonderful world of Saint Lucia rum. Enjoy the sessions. We'll be back at the end with some Q&A for you all. Cheers. Over to you, gents.
Okay, welcome everybody. Well, first I'm going to start off with a little history of Saint Lucia Distillers just to get some context. We could actually put the first slide on. Right, so Saint Lucia Distillers is a very small company. We have about 150 employees employed right here in Saint Lucia, producing over 30 different rum products. That includes rums, liqueurs, and fortified wines. Well, the history, if just go to the next slide, this shows our brands, what we're doing. Most people know us for Admiral Rodney, Chairman's Reserve Bounty, and our liqueur range, which is at Marigot Bay products. And these are the main products we produce here at Saint Lucia Distillers. But to give you a little context of where it all started, just to show you, we're actually a small island, next slide, in the Caribbean, just located in the heart of the Caribbean in Saint Lucia, a very small island bordering us. To the north is Martinique, Barbados to the southwest, and St. Vincent to the south of Saint Lucia. And this small island, actually, we're right now the only distillery that is in Saint Lucia, and that actually came out after many years of rum making here in Saint Lucia, where we first started in the 19th century with over 6 distilleries. And by the end of the 1930s or so, there were only 2 remaining distilleries. Next slide, please. But up till 1972, the 2 remaining distilleries, what happened, our history is very tied in with a family called the Barnard family. And the Barnard family decided to buy the second distillery on the island, remaining distillery, and the 2 distilleries were merged in 1972. Now, they chose the Roseau site because the location was ideal because of the abundance of water. That's one. And also, it afforded them the ability to bring in large ships to bring in molasses, because Saint Lucia transitioned from sugarcane to banana as their main crop in the 1960s. So they were importing molasses thereafter. Afterwards, from that point, being that it's on the west coast, they had calm seas, very little swells, so it was the ideal location to bring molasses into the island. And being that the distillery is just 1.5 kilometers away from the shore, it just made perfect sense to locate Saint Lucia Distillers in Roseau. Next slide. So just to give you a little history of our timeline, from 1972, like I mentioned, the merger of the two distilleries, the one owned by the Barnard family and the second owned by Geese Industries, which is a Dutch shipping company. From there, Saint Lucia decided to make its own rums. We started with Bounty in 1973, and then in 1981, we made our super premium called Admiral Rodney. But it was the Barnard family under the Laurie Barnard, who was part of the Barnard family. He was actually very invested in the operations and the technical know-how of making rum. And he became more and more involved until in 1989, he became the chairman of Saint Lucia Distillers. And that is where it transformed the company, because his idea was to make Saint Lucia Distillers a world-class boutique distillery of making fine rums. And that's where all the inspiration that we have today comes from Laurie Barnard. In 1993, he bought over the remaining shares of the Geese company. And so it was wholly, the company became 100% owned by the Barnard family. And then later on, with that investment, they started making liqueurs in, next slide, please. In 1993, we started making liqueurs, and we started with a range of La Belle Creole products, which were different mixers, which were used in bars, because the island was heavily invested in tourism. So that was something that we needed to produce on the island for a lot of those hotels and restaurants and bars. As time went by and our aging increased, we made Chairman's Reserve, which most people know us for, and in 1999. However, the Barnard family needed some capital. So what happened for the other investments? In 2005, they sold to Clico, which was an insurance company. It's continued that way until for many years. But before then, we had a major fire in 2007, which was caused by arson. And it actually destroyed the administration building and so a lot of our storage at Saint Lucia Distillers. We lost a lot of our records, our aging records, a lot of the history of rum in Saint Lucia and so forth. So it was a really trialing time for us. However, as time went by, we rebuilt and we started picking up from the ashes, so to speak, and we continued the operations. What happened in 2000, the next slide, please. In 2012, we had another tragic event where Laurie Barnard passed away. And it gave rise to something else, which is Margaret Morplazy was appointed as the first CEO of Saint Lucia Distillers and the first woman CEO in the history, which was amazing feat for her to accomplish at that time, being the first woman to actually be the chairperson of a distillery. But under her tutelage, we continued the operation and continued Laurie's philosophy about making rum. And what happened is we now started thinking about our culture, our history, and then we started making rums like 1941 in 2014, which was a blend of our French history and our British past. So what happened, we merged the two types of production in one to make that product. However, things change again. The company FICO was under judicial management, and so Saint Lucia Distillers again was sold to this time a French company, French family company called Group Bernard Hyatt, and from 2016 thereon, underneath that new company, they decided to leave the operations to us, and so we continued what we were doing, making great rums, but this time in 2020, Loic Léger was appointed as the MD and started managing the operations of Saint Lucia Distillers up to this day. So our history was kind of a mixture of good, great times and some tragic events, but it made us who we are. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. So to start off, Saint Lucia Distillers, we actually use two raw materials. Everybody knows rum in the typical raw materials for us would be molasses, sugarcane molasses, and we use sugarcane juice. So we do have a small operation right here next to the distillery where we actually grow sugarcane. It's about a 10-acre plot of land. If the next slide, please. And from that 10-acre plot of land, we grow a lot that sugarcane for sugarcane fermentation. However, because we are in close proximity to the Rosa River, as you can see from the slides here, we have access to soft water, which was really good for fermentation. Very low mineral content, but enough to allow the yeast to absorb some of those minerals and affect the flavor profile of our rums. And the other type of water we use on the island is actually we have a big program here at Saint Lucia Distillers where we actually harvest rainwater. Now, being that we are located in the rain belt of Roseau, what happens is every year we are able to collect about 3.5 million gallons of water, and that water is now filtered and used for blending. So 100% of the water we use for blending is rainwater, harvested rainwater. Next slide, please. So that takes us now to the type of yeast that we do. So besides the raw materials, we actually use two strains of yeast. One of those strains are used for sugarcane fermentation. However, in our two strains of yeast, we actually have one which is dedicated for our light rums, for our overproof and for our liqueurs. And the other strain, which was extracted from the bark of sugarcane in the Caribbean, is actually used for our aged rums. And so that now takes us into our production, which Lennox will actually dive into.
Hi, everyone. So as we all know, rum production starts with the fermentation. We have both molasses fermentation here and sugarcane juice fermentation. For the molasses fermentation, you're seeing there on the slide the mother vessel, but that's the second stage. The first stage is the propagator stage of fermentation, and that's where we attempt to create a very healthy, a robust culture of yeast. We like when the yeast count is in excess of 200 million cells per mil, and with a budding index of somewhere in the region of about 30% or more. Once that is achieved, we transfer the propagator to the mother vessel, and that's where the real fermentation starts. It's a semi-continuous process. So we will begin to add more diluted molasses to the mother vessel until the vessel is full. And then the overflow, so to speak, from that vessel goes to the next stage, which is a finishing fermenters, which is what you're seeing on the other side of the slide. Next slide, please. So in a diagram form, this is what our fermentation basically looks like. There's molasses mixed with yeast and water. Water with quite a bit of nutrients. Saint Lucia is a volcanic island. There's not a lot of hardness in the water, but a lot of other components which the yeast love. Bearing in mind the nutrition of yeast is similar to the nutrition requirements of plants. And so the NPKs are important. Obviously, we have to supplement for the N, for nitrogen, but lots of P, lots of K in the water in Saint Lucia. Molasses fermentation lasts for about 36 to 42 hours. We allow a resting period of maybe 6 to 8 hours just to make sure that all of our acetaldehyde has been converted to ethanol and that we get rid of some of the carbon dioxide out of the mixture so you don't have entrainment in the distillation systems, and just to allow some settling of the undesirable residue from the molasses. For sugarcane juice fermentation, we do benefit from a little bit of natural fermentation, but we quickly control that by adding some yeast to direct the flavors. As you probably well know, sugarcane juice auto-ferments within a couple hours. And so the fermentation will start whether or not you add yeast, but we add yeast to control flavors. That fermentation lasts for about 72 hours, almost 3 days. And we get fairly high alcohol concentrations, up to 9.5%. For the molasses fermentation, we get up to 8.5% alcohol by volume. Next slide, please. For distillation, we have both pot stills and a column still. The sugarcane juice fermentation, or the ferment from that, is only processed on our small double retort John Doerr #1 pot still. Only 100 imperial gallons, 450 liter in capacity. That's capacity of the kettle. The sugarcane operation is relatively small, occupies less than 1% of our total production. So it's kind of like the little salt and pepper of our blends at this point, but still important to us. The double retort pot still is also represented in John Doerr #2 pot still. So it's a similar design, just on a larger scale. That has a kettle of about 6,000 liters. The Vendome pot still, made by the Vendome company, has a kettle capacity of about 1,364 liters. It's an interesting still. It's a hybrid still with a kettle on top of which there is a rectifier. Gives a different kind of flavor from either of the John Doerrs, and the flavors of the two John Doerrs are also different from each other, because in distillation, size happens to matter. We also have a column still, just one column still. It's a 2-column column still. It's a coffee still design, so it has just the first column, which is you can call it the analyzer column, the beer column, the wash column, same thing, and then the rectifier. Having just 2 columns means that we are not over distilling. So at Saint Lucia Distillers, we retain a lot of the flavors that were generated in fermentation, which are so important for aging. And so we have that capacity with only 2 columns in the column still. We make 2 different types of rums on the column still for aging. We have the ability to make relatively clean or low congeneric profile spirit, which we do not age, but we are still able to retain a fair amount of the congeners that are required. Next slide, please. In terms of flavors, a range of tropical flavors are produced on the various stills. We have represented them here with the actual fruits. As you probably well know, because you have alcohol and you have different types of alcohol in the fermentation mixed in the distillates, ethanol and the higher alcohols, there are some acids around in the fermentation mixture, and some of them will come over into the distillates. There is quite a bit of esterification going on during fermentation. Some might happen during the distillation process, and of course during aging. And so a range of flavors are generated due to all these various esters and the other compounds, including the higher alcohols. And so there's a depiction here of all the different types of flavors that we're able to generate. They are actually different on each of the stills. John Doerr 1 and John Doerr 2, though similar in design, do deliver different flavors. Vendome, pot still deliver different flavor. Citrus is one of the key flavors that we are able to pick up in the Vendome spirit, which distinguishes from the others. Next slide, please. Of course, being in the tropics, Saint Lucia Distillers has a benefit of tropical aging, which we know has superior elements compared to aging outside of the tropics. And we have been using various types of barrels for aging. Bourbon barrels by far occupies the lion's share of the barrels that we use. But we do have a fair amount of port barrels that we age in, some brandy barrels, white and red wine, and we have been moving into using cognac barrels for aging. So our flavors continue to grow and intensify and differentiate as time goes by, and we evolve with the times. Next slide, please. That's it. Questions and answers. Thank you.
Fantastic, guys. Thank you very much. So we do have a few questions here, so we'll see how many we get to cover here before the team pull us off stage. But first of all, great job, guys. Phenomenal operation, phenomenal explanation of what is a very, very complex set of parameters. And one of the questions we got here from Doman was, in terms of the yeast outputs and the byproducts at yeast, could you tell us a little more about which outputs you're particularly looking to keep and any that you're particularly looking to remove, and kind of how you might manage that through your fermentation?
We encourage the production of esters, obviously, because you absolutely need those. So we would have, it's interesting how rum production goes. It's a balancing act in fermentation. You really want clean fermentation so that you get high efficiency, high conversion of sugars to alcohol. But at the same time, you want a little bit of the not so clean stuff, because the not so clean stuff can generate some flavors for you. So it's a bit of a balancing act, and that's important for your ester production. We try to limit the amount of fusel oils that are generated. And so the fermentation is controlled to limit this. Luckily for molasses fermentation, we do not have a lot of amino acids because there's very little proteins in the raw material, unlike those who make whiskey, etc. have those issues. So we don't have a lot of problem with fusel oils anyway. But whatever is generated, we attempt to reduce that as much as possible in the distillation systems. And both the pot stills and the column stills, have a means of reducing the amount of fusel oil that we end up generating in the distillate. Methanol is concerning, and so we do not want lots of methanol in the distillate. Luckily, again, for rum producers, the raw material does not contain a lot of pectin, and so you do not have a lot of conversion of raw materials to methanol. But for what is there, you just manage your head's control and ensure that you reduce the amount of methanol. Unfortunately, head's control normally also causes you to lose some ethyl acetate, which is not good, but I guess you have to sacrifice something. So that's kind of how we attempt to control our flavors, our congeners between fermentation and distillation.
That is an amazing, thorough answer. Thank you for that. Another question we got in was, you touched on the rainwater and capturing that and using that throughout your production process. In terms of kind of carbon footprint, are there any other things that you guys are exploring, looking at doing to kind of mitigate some of the carbon impact that you have at a distillery there?
Well, in addition to using rainwater for the generation of steam and for blending, I don't know if I'd mentioned that we use rainwater for both blending and the generation of steam. We also collect and use waste oil from the cruise ships for the generation of steam. Thank heavens, Saint Lucia is so beautiful. A lot of tourists come here. by cruise ships and otherwise. And so there's a lot of cruise ship docking in Saint Lucia, so we're able to get a fair amount of waste oil. So that controls our recycling of waste in Saint Lucia.
Yeah, in addition to that, in our farming practices for sugarcane, we do not do any burning of the cane itself after, when it's matured. So what happened is we do actually harvest manually with machetes and so forth. What remains, that a lot of that excess matter that remains after harvesting is actually incorporated back into the soil. So what we do, we plow it back into the soil, and so that's incorporated and organically broken down with using the natural microbial the natural microbes that are in the soil, so that you could break down, extract those nutrients for the next crop. So that's another way of making sure that we are sustainable in our agricultural practices compared to some of the other places that produces sugarcane.
It's fantastic, fantastic. In terms of the double coffee still that you have, I know you said it had 45 plates, but you're drawing off of different plates there, right? And could you maybe talk to which plates you draw off and how the characteristics of that distillate change based on those different plates?
Well, currently, actually, on our coffee still, we actually produce 3 marks, and we extract out of 3 different plates. That 45 column rectification column, the highest plate we extract off is on plate 40. Now that plate produces a very light engineer, very, very light, almost close to neutral light, but still retain the characteristics of sugarcane, our raw material, molasses and sugar. However, you get some very floral notes in it, and sweet and floral hints, and very tiny hints of fruit coming out through there. Now that is because it's very light. We actually use it in our overproof and use for our liqueurs, where it doesn't have that much of a flavor impact. But compared to the other 2 plates, plate 30, which is our lowest plate, and plate 32, which is where we collect the majority of our aged rums, these 2 plates, as you go down, the intensity of the fruity flavors and the floral note, the intensity seems to be much, much higher. So you get a lot of those tropical fruit flavors coming out through there. A lot of that pineapple note, banana-like notes coming through, and as those fruity notes. And then you get a whole set of floral notes. To me, sometimes it's very like it smell like rose petals at times. But when you look at it, when you taste it, the rum is actually, the distillate is actually has a sweet taste on the tongue, and that's really amazing. Very sweet, soft, creamy notes coming through there. And that's all a result of the fermentation. And that's what we are seeking to get with our distillates, that nice, sweet, floral, fruity notes, which are later now transformed in aging of our rums.
Fantastic, fantastic. I'm not sure how much time we have left, but I'm going to try and ask a few of the quicker questions. Are your yeasts proprietary?
Well, right now we use commercial yeast. We work in so both yeasts are commercial type yeast, but we actually work quite long and hard with that company to get us the right yeast and match it against what we wanted. So selecting a yeast is not that easy. What happens is you produce a product, you distill it, and then you look at the flavor profile. So we went for a wide range of yeast, because at Saint Lucia Distillers, we don't have the capacity to grow large volumes of yeast. So we have a very small propagation plant. So we had to leave that to someone else to do for us. And it seemed to be working quite fine.
That's great. And then in terms of, Lennox, you mentioned that 200 million cell count on your yeast before you go into that kind of main fermentation step. Are you kind of reutilizing some of your dunder there? What kind of pre-treatments are you doing to kind of ensure that your yeast are healthy and thriving?
We are not currently using dunder or acidification or anything like that. Luckily, the yeast that we get are very pure, very robust, and we are able to achieve the 200 million or more cells per mil just by propagating directly. We have to, of course, add some nitrogen supplement to that, and we do pasteurize and then cool just to make sure the yeast quickly becomes the dominant microbe in the mixture. But no acidification, no use of dunder at this stage, no.
Right. We haven't got kicked off yet, so I'm going to ask one last question, and we're going to look at maturation a little bit more. And there was a question here just in terms of the different impacts that the different types of barrels that you use bring to the table. So are there particular characteristics you're looking for from the different previous contents of different barrels?
Ian, you want to take that?
Yeah, could you say that? I'm trying to get the volume is not so great on my side.
Sure. So in terms of your maturation and using barrels with previous contents, are there particular characteristics that you're looking for from each of those different types of barrels to amplify what you've got from your various marks?
Well, I think what we looked at when we selected our barrels, we use a wide range of barrels, mostly bourbon barrels. Once used, so what we were looking at is from the barrels, our marks usually have a small amount of esters and a little bit very small levels, low levels of fusel oils. What we want to accentuate really is the transformation of some of those fusel oil components and the esterific components of the mark, and then allow the barrels to add the additional components, some of the spicy notes, tobacco, oak-like notes, which are coming through your polyphenols, your hemicellulose. You have your sugars in there as well, your tannins, and which contributes to your color. So all of those things combined, I guess, with the environment which we are aging in, actually changes the flavor of our rums. Because of, again, tropical aging, high temperatures of 30 to 32 degrees in Saint Lucia, and also high humidity. Sometimes we experience as high as 80%. All of those things now causes a remarkable transformation, through oxidation and reduction reactions in the barrel, which actually contribute to our flavor profile.
Amazing stuff, guys. Thank you very much. I'm pretty sure that is all we have time for. I'm very, very sorry if we didn't get to your questions, but I've shared my email address in the chat. If you'd like to follow up on your questions, please email me. I will reach out to the guys. We'll do our best to answer any other questions that you have. Thank you, Ian and Lennox, for sharing your knowledge with us. It's amazing just to spend some time with you guys, as you've forgotten more than we will ever know, and we appreciate you. Guys, looking forward to our next sessions coming up in the next few weeks, so please look out for those. On the 28th of May, we have our session on Grenada with Devon Date, and then on the 11th of June, our session with Joy Spence and David Morrison for Jamaica. So look forward to those. Like I said, look for us on our WSET Global Hub on YouTube, and we'll see you for a session soon. There is a feedback poll here, so please do take a session, share your feedback with us. We're always looking to improve. See you soon, guys. Ian, Lennox, thank you very much for your time.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye, Rob. Take care. Bye, everyone.